because so many ER nurses think, I'm not an expert. Like you very much are experts, because I guarantee nobody in that room knows the stuff that you know.
Yep.
And I just want nurses to feel empowered, and as, badass and amazing as they are, is like, you are phenomenal and you know some stuff. And you're the one that the whole family calls when they don't know what, And so I was like, that's that the jury is just like, your Uncle Bob and Aunt Becky, That's all they are.
Hello, and welcome to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. This is where we share stories for inspiration, entertainment, and encouragement, because we all know emergency nurses have the best stories. Now here's your host, Kevin McFarland.
Hey everybody, Kevin McFarland here from the Art of Emergency Nursing, and thanks for listening to this episode, and thanks for downloading this episode. It's been a while since I've posted an episode. I've recently relocated, and I'm finally getting settled and looking forward to getting some more episodes to you in 2023. So thanks for hanging in there with me. If you haven't done so already, I'd be really happy if you would just do me a favor and leave me a rating and review for the podcast. This is one of the main ways that new people find the podcast. So it's a great way for you to help out the podcast, and it costs you absolutely nothing to do. Just go into iTunes and leave a rating and review. Super easy, super simple. I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to see my guest today present at AOEN 22 in Denver this year. And oh my God, she did one of the most powerful talks I think I've ever seen, where she talked about rape from the SANE nurse perspective, where she talked about documentation. She talked about the legal aspects of care that you provide. And oh my God, it was probably one of the most powerful lectures I've seen the entire conference. She absolutely killed it. And this is somebody you're going to be seeing more and more, I'm sure, in the national ENA speaking circuit. My guest today is a longtime SANE nurse. She's a ER nurse. She's an educator, and she's absolutely amazing. You're really going to love this episode with my friend, Heidi.
My name is Heidi Gilbert, and I am the Emergency Department Clinical Educator and SANE Program Coordinator at Stillwater Medical Center in Stillwater, Oklahoma, which is halfway between Oklahoma City and Tulsa, home of the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Go Pokes for whoever's a Big 12 fan. I've been at Stillwater for about 14 years.
Wow.
I've been a nurse for 25 now. And then mostly minute. Yeah, I did the long track. The only thing I've not been is a CNA. I started out as LPN and then worked for 5 years while I went and got my associates at night.
You ran the 5-year track too? Me too.
Oh,
5 years for a 2-year degree?
Yeah. Well, then it was 10 years. Another 10 years, I got my bachelor's degree. And then another 10 years after that, I finished my master's degree in nursing education about 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
I know. It's so nice to, like, this week my husband travels and he's gone. And I was like, I don't have a paper to write. I don't know what to do with myself now. So it's super nice.
Now, do you feel like that's your terminal degree? Are you done? Or are you like going, maybe?
I don't foresee me going on to get a doctorate or a PhD. I might go back and get my master's in forensic nursing. I think that would be super cool. I love forensics. I love my role as a SANE nurse. I don't love that people are victims of domestic violence, but I love taking care of them and just victims of violence in general. I love the courtroom, and I love that kind of gray area and marriage between law enforcement and prosecution and nursing, and how all of that complements each other. I love that stuff. Yeah.
That's
so I
cool.
might do that.
All right. Fair enough. But you just got them your MSN, so that's awesome. Those are some great credentials to put at the end of your name.
I used to think that was crazy, back, I don't know, 20 years ago, looking at those people with the alphabet soup behind their name. And now that's almost kind of me now. Like, I have a lot of initials.
Now you're like, oh yeah. And I'm going to use every one of them.
So I was on that. I have to admit, I was on that, just because you have all these initials doesn't make you, the smartest person in the room. And I absolutely still agree with that. But I think that, I don't know. I don't think anybody should be embarrassed. I think quite the opposite. You should be very proud. Those are really hard initials to get.
But you earned them. And like, I have a string of letters after my name, and some of my peers kind of gave me a little bit of a hard time about it. And I'm like, I'm going to use all of those.
Mm-hmm.
So,
oh yeah. And I have a spiel that I do a lot of as an educator. I do a lot of our orientation stuff and work with new grads and orienting new people to the ER. And I kind of have this soapbox spiel as I walk them around the department and, show them CAT scan and show them the bathroom by CAT scan, that everybody poops at. You don't poop in the break room bathroom.
Good advice. Good advice.
And then, take them into the supply closet and show them that. And that's kind of where I have.
They can't poop there either.
No, can't poop in the supply closet. That's frowned upon. But I, give them this soapbox, my spiel about how our culture at Stillwater Medical is really phenomenal. I've worked a lot of places, and it really is a kind of a magical place to work. That administration really does care about people and the awesome way we talk to each other. And I did tell them that, you're in an emergency room now, so you work in the gray area. So you can't get your feelings hurt because it's a high stress area, and people may not say, pretty please, will you please scoot over? And will you pretty please hand me? And I said, but on the flip side of that coin, I said, nobody deserves to get degraded. And I tell them that kind of with the initial thing is that whether you have 0 initials or you have a string of them, or you're the director of our emergency department, medical director, whether you're the CEO, everybody deserves respect. And I don't care if you have 0 initials or 50. And I said, it doesn't make me smarter than you. And I said, I have a lot of experience and I have a lot of tools in my toolbox. I said, but I'm not smarter than you. I said, so everybody is a valuable member of our team. Everybody has something to add. And I said, I screw up and make mistakes. And when we start talking about teaching code blue, I said, if that's my dad that they're doing compressions on, or my husband or somebody, I said, and if I don't care if it's the director of cardiology, if he's not doing good compression, somebody needs to speak up.
Yep, absolutely.
So I said, there's no room for ego.
That's one of the things I've always appreciated about some of the facilities I've worked for, where, when I worked in an ER where I was a tech in the ER, and as a tech, we did crazy stuff. We did we did all the skills that a nurse would do in any other hospital. And we just did skills that a doctor would do at other hospitals, right? So here I was learning how to suture. I was learning how to splint. I was doing Foley's, NG tubes. I was doing all this cool stuff. I didn't even have a degree. Like I had a 6-week certificate of being, 12-week certificate of being a EMT, and then got my EMT intermediate, and I had my license. But I certainly didn't have any experience. But it was one of those where, the next thing you know, years later, I remember teaching med school and teaching the suture lab for med school every month. The officers, residents would come through, and I'd be like, hey, you're going to learn how to suture with Kevin. And they'd be like, oh, great. Are you one of our attendings? I'm like, no, I'm one of the techs. And they were like, we have a tech teaching us this? And they're like, yeah. They're like, do you even have a degree? I'm like, yes, I do. I have it. Or no, actually at the time I didn't. I go, no, as a matter of fact, I don't. I go, but I'm better than you at this.
Yeah.
And they were kind of, the mindset of, okay, if you can teach something, teach it. And everyone got respect. And, the techs were considered a very respected part of the team. And that culture was just something we always did. Whether you were a bachelor's prepared nurse or an associate's prepared nurse, at the time it didn't matter. Yeah. And what I tell people now all the time is that associates may get you in the door, but the BSN's probably what you're going to eventually need. And I was resistant. I don't know about you, but I know when I went from associate's to bachelor's degree, I was like, I don't want to do it. Like, I don't need it. I don't need it. There's no reason I need it. And then sure enough, I went and did it. And then, next thing you know, I was thinking about getting my master's degree. So.
Yeah. And I think that the only reason I actually got my bachelor's degree, and I can't even remember the job it was, I was working in an ER somewhere, not the one I'm in now. And I was flipping through maybe some nurse wanted ads or something. And there was some cool job and it said BSN required. Yep. And I was like, you know what? I bet if I got that, then it's going to probably open a couple more doors. And really with my master's, there was some ENA committees, and my bucket list goal is to help author some chapters on domestic violence and sexual assault. And some of those type, it's master's required. And I was like, God, man, they're going to make me go back to school now. So it really does. It really does. And I don't, that's why I don't necessarily think that any of the letters make you smarter. You certainly learn things along the way and get some more tools in your toolbox, but it sure does open some doors.
Yeah. Now, what other certifications do you have?
I have my CEN and I have my TCRN. I keep meaning to, which now that I'm done with my master's, I plan to get my CPEN. I won't be part of the 5 club because I don't fly anymore. I did that for a while, but I'm not going to take those certifications just to get them. Kudos to the people with all 5 of them if they're in transport. That's awesome. I would like to sit for I'm a SANE nurse. I've been a SANE nurse for 12, 13 years now, but I've just not sat for the board certification just because like the other ones, it's expensive. It's like $450 to take it. Yeah. But I plan to do that next year. So just my SANE, BSN, no, not BSN, MSN. Wow, that's hard to. I haven't said that yet.
Gotta make sure to update that on your work signature there.
And my just TCRN and CEN.
Good for you. That's awesome. Yeah, I got to tell you, I've said it before, and people have heard me say that I'm not a go get all five, because like I'm never going to fly. That's not in the cards for me at all. And to me, if I get the CFRN certification, which I could probably pass, you could probably pass. We could both probably pass. But like, to me, if I have it, that cheapens that certificate, that certification. Because like all I did was take a test, and it doesn't mean anything to me. And there's a handful of people that's kind of the case. Like they just took it just to take it. And I mean, cool for them for having goals. And you know, I always say you're going to learn something from it, and you know, you're going to learn something that may save a life someday. And that's kind of cool, but it's just not like, I don't see myself doing I was like, I'm never going to do the high five. Like that's not going to be me. But then I could see where people were like, well, I want to do the CPEN, and Pam Bartley kind of called me out to get my CPEN last year, and I still haven't done it. And she hasn't brought it back up. Thank God.
I know. Me too.
And yeah, so that's kind of been on my list. And then I was kind of like, well, transport nurse would be kind of cool. And I used to be an EMT, so I could probably pass that exam. And I did the review but then I was like, so then if you do have all four, do you want to get the fifth just because? And again, I don't think I would do it, but it is kind of cool to have those credentials on your, I used to laugh at I have a friend named Drew, who's probably one of the smartest nurses I've ever met. And he was like, his signature line was ridiculous. Like it was MSN, CEN, TCRN. I don't think he had a CPEN, CCRN. He was an FNP, and then he became a lawyer, right? Like this is like the smartest guy, like one of the smartest guys I've ever met. And I used to tease him all the time about all those credentials. He's like, hey man, you got them, flaunt them, right? Yeah, you got to use them. And I was always like, and then when I got him, I'm like, oh yeah, for sure. For sure. So when I got a jacket at work, and they were like, we're going to put your name and your credentials and stuff on there. And they're like, what are your credentials? And I told them, they're like, we don't have that much room. Can you narrow it down to just a couple of those? I was like, yeah.
How are you supposed to pick?
I know. I was like,
your favorite children.
Yeah. I was like, okay, let's see which ones are really, which one are the ones that like for that role were kind of important. So then I get the stupid jacket embroidered. And then like right after that, I go and get my NPDS, my professional development certification. And I was like, well.
Oh yeah. That's the other one. Yeah. I'd like to go get that one too.
Yeah. So, and then, so then I was like, well, okay. And then we got new jackets, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll put it on that jacket. And then right around that time, I found out about the fellowship. So I'm like, oh no, we're not getting anything done until October. Like nothing's.
Oh yeah. That's awesome.
Nothing's getting embroidered until October. And then there's that one will be the final one. So, but, so it's cool. It's cool to have all the alphabet soup, but again, like, I like the way you say it. Like it means you've taken some tests. It means you might have some knowledge, and might have some knowledge and experience. But it doesn't inherently in and of itself make you a better nurse.
No, not at all. And what was funny is this year I got accepted to be an item writer for BCEN,
That's awesome.
Which is like a super cool experience. So we went to Kansas. Was it Missouri? Kansas City, Missouri, maybe? I don't remember where it's at. Olathe, Kansas. That's where it was at. Oh. Olathe, I'm probably offended someone from Kansas. I'm sorry. I don't know how to say that. But it's funny because we all get together and then they split you up into the 5 different groups. And so I'm a CEN writer, and we had to take our picture. I remember like each individual group, we took a big group photo all together, and then each individual group, and they took us into the CPEN room where they were all writing, and there was a screen. I was like, made a big show. I was like, by all means, please keep working and keep working loudly. Everybody
go ahead. I'm taking this test sometime. So you
I would like to hear everything you're talking about. But it was really a good experience. And, for anybody that is interested in board certification and terrified about taking the test, I learned, which they tell you this even in nursing school, but I learned definitively that the BCN, there are no trick questions. Like it's literally just knowledge, and they make it I learned a lot about like actual test writing that I didn't know, which I did learn some in my master's program too, but there's not even the nursing, like everything except, there's none of those questions in there. And so, we have to write those questions to where a 4 or 5 year ED nurse would know.
Yeah.
So they're not even supposed to be extremely hard questions, because I kind of came up with one and it got shot down because they said, would a 4-year ER nurse know that? I was like, probably not.
Maybe
I know.
maybe
and so that's why I've told all of the ED nurses, I'm like, tell them that. So I said, it's just study the stuff. And I've told everybody that I know that takes it, of course, passing it is the goal and everybody wants to pass it. And I said, but the studying alone really makes you a better nurse, because all that stuff that you read, I said, it's going to make you better. Just taking the test makes you better.
Yeah. I mean, just studying for the test. I mean, Pam Bartley said the journey is the win. And it's really true, because it's getting ready for the exam is what's really going to make the difference. And I remember one of the nurses going, oh my God, I remember studying something. And then it came up and I was like, oh, I know the answer to this. I know what this is. And you're like going, that's what it's for. That's what it's for. And I took I think my CEN expires next year. And I'll take the test again just to challenge myself and just to study and go take the test.
Oh, you're a better man than I am.
Well, I let mine lapse. When I first moved to Houston. Somehow I just didn't think about it. And, they had an old email address for me. So I never got any kind of notifications. And I lost it. And I was like going, I can't not be a CEN. Like, that's not okay. So I scheduled the test, and then I scheduled the test and I was like, oh shit, what if I don't pass? So I'm like going, oh my gosh. So I like didn't say anything to a whole lot of people, but I was like, okay, I got to study and make sure I'm good. And I've taught a CEN review a couple of times. So like, I felt pretty comfortable with most of the stuff, but I was like, but there's some stuff I got to just kind of go through and study. And I did, and luckily did fine. But it was one of those where I was like, I felt more pressure retaking that exam than I did taking the exam the first time. Because the first time I first took the exam, like I was still a fairly new nurse. Like I took it way sooner than I should have. And luckily passed, but like it wasn't like a stellar pass, but it was a pass. And I remember thinking, like, I remember going back to work going like, yep, that's right. I'm kind of a big deal. I'm a CEN. Like got my little pin there. I'm like, yeah, I'm a big deal now. And, nurses who've forgotten more about emergency nursing than I was like, whatever, dude. Like, good for you, but who cares? Nobody cares.
Well, I mean, it is nice because I, with my role, I testify a lot and I do some expert testimony as well. And so, I mean, it is nice to get up there and when you're introducing yourself with your credentials to a jury that, I'm board certified in emergency nursing and board certified in trauma nursing. And, that's something we have our legal boot camp at conference this year. My shameless plug here that I'm super excited about is we'll practice that is how you introduce yourself and present yourself to a jury, and
how you present yourself as an expert.
Yeah. And you are. And so many ER nurses think, I'm not an expert. Like you are, you very much are experts, because I guarantee nobody in that room knows the stuff that you know. Yep. And I just want nurses to feel empowered, and as, badass and amazing as they are, is like, you are phenomenal and you know some stuff. And you're the one that the whole family calls when they don't know what, And so I was like, it's that the jury is just like, your Uncle Bob and Aunt Becky, that's all they are. And, so I'm really excited about that legal boot camp. It's the first time we're doing it.
That's cool. I may have to check that out. I think that'd be kind of cool to see, because I've seen people get on the stand, and I've not been deposed. That's me knocking on wood. I've not been deposed for my nursing care, but I've been deposed for another job that I had, and I got tore apart on the stand, like tore to pieces on the stand. Like I looked like a dope. Nobody would have believed a word I said. And then the next time I was deposed for my own accident that I was in, and I was deposed. And by that time I had a little better idea. And the lawyers say that they don't prep you, but they say, we're just going to kind of get you a little bit ready. But they're like, but we're not prepping you. Like, let's make it real clear. And I'm like, understand. And they were like, oh, you're going to do just fine. They're like, you're going to do just fine. And when I did actually get deposed by the people who were suing the state, because I was involved in a car accident in a state vehicle, started suing the state and me. I went in there feeling like pretty confident for that deposition. I was like, I got this. And there's a question about whether or not they were the people who I hit this other car, and there's a question about whether or not they were intoxicated. And I said they clearly smelled like alcoholic beverages, and they're like, what does that mean? I go, well, they smelled like they had been drinking some alcoholic beverages. And they're like, they smelled like alcohol. I go, no. I didn't say that. I said they smelled like alcoholic beverages. And I remember the lawyer going, yes. Like, my lawyer's just sitting there like going, oh, he's got this. And he was like, well, how would you know? How would you know what alcoholic beverages smell like? And I'm like, because I've been an ER nurse for a long time. And they're like, oh. And then he really wanted to talk about me being an ER nurse. And when I said something about their I said something about their injuries. One guy had a laceration on his forehead, and I go, it was a laceration. They're like, how could you be sure it was a laceration? I go, let's go back to the fact that I'm an ER nurse. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, sorry. I was like, I know what a laceration is. And they're like, oh yeah, okay. And I went out of there like feeling confident. But I've never been deposed from my nursing care, but I know that would, I've seen people who have, and have watched people do that. And it's scary. Like, it's scary to do if you're defending your care. Cause you always think like the lawyers are trying to trick you, and maybe they are. But the reality is that's why you want to make sure your documentation stands up for itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I've only been deposed one, and it wasn't, well, I guess technically it was for my care too. I wasn't the one being sued. It was a physician, in the hospital, of course, many years ago. And so I was the treating nurse. So I was deposed for the care that I gave, which was fine. It was what was ordered, and probably the things that were ordered were probably not appropriate. I'd been a nurse for a hot second, so I didn't realize that at the time that it was probably not appropriate orders. So that's the only time that I have been like that. I've got buckets of experience on taking care or testifying, being the nurse, taking care of someone that's a perpetrator or a victim of a crime.
Yeah.
And that's our focus this year, is with that. And then hopefully this will be a annual thing. And next year we can kind of focus on like, what if you're sued? What if the hospital or, another coworker is sued? And how do you, not be honest without throwing your coworkers under the bus, type thing. It's a lot. Legal stuff with nursing is, everybody's terrified of it because we don't learn that in nursing school.
Yeah. And it's just scary because it's something that we know. I mean, look at the Redonda Vought trial. Like, I mean, there's so much risk, and it's not anything that anyone trains you for.
No. Yeah. So. And it's funny that like nurses know, I mean, it's in a perfect world. Yes. We always do the 5 rights every single time. You always do this, and you always follow policy and procedure and every protocol to the T. And we all know that there are just times in chaos, especially during COVID, especially during, ER, when you're, 2-3 nurses short, and you're doing what you can do, the best you can do.
Yeah. But there's nothing harder than leaving saying, okay, I don't feel like I gave them my best care, but I kept them alive.
Right.
And that's all. That's really hard sometimes for nurses to be like, sometimes that's about all you can do, and you're like going, that's not the kind of nurse I want to be. And it's not the kind of nurse most nurses want to be.
I know you kind of cringe sometimes out in public when you'll meet somebody and they're like, yeah, I went to the ER once, or my mom, we went there for care. And you just kind of are bracing for them to say it was terrible. It was, and most of the time they're like, yeah, it was great. And I know that there are times that you read things on social media, or you hear things out and about how terrible the care is at XYZ hospital. Every hospital gets that. And some of it is patient perception, and some of it may very well have happened. And I know that I've probably taken care of patients and not been on my A game. And if that is the only perception that they have of that department, I probably was not a really good representative of my care, my level of care, or the ER. And so that's what I try to tell patients sometimes. I'm like, sometimes whether you're a teacher or a cop or a surveyor or, retail person, everybody's not on their game all the time. And giving some grace sometimes to people.
Yeah, it goes a long way. What made you decide to get into nursing anyway?
Nursing. Actually, I wish it was a better story. I needed a job that was going to pay better than, minimum wage, pretty quick, because I had a baby on the way and I decided to go. My husband at the time, all his family was in nursing. And so I decided I would go to LPN school, because that's about the only thing in that kind of the poor area where I was at in Oklahoma. That was about the only way out, was nursing. That was that, a respectable, I should say, way out. And so I went into it and was young and naive and thought that, I knew everything. And I'll never forget, I just about killed a patient because I didn't check a blood sugar, and he became glycemic, and I got reamed, and I thought, I'm never going to be a good nurse. This isn't for me. I just almost killed somebody. And it was, in that moment I was like, this really is a big deal, what you do as a nurse. And, working as LPN for 5 years, I have the utmost respect for LPNs. And 100%. I feel like I advocate for, we have LPNs in our emergency department, and we wouldn't make it without them. And they function, thankfully, to the level of their licensure. And I just think it's ridiculous for any healthcare organization, let alone emergency department, to employ anybody that they're not utilizing to the level of their licensure and knowledge and competency and expertise. Yeah. When I hear, we have LPNs, but they can only transport patients. It's like, they're nurses. They're not even nurses aides. They are nurses. They took an NCLEX. They took boards. They are nurses. And so I like to advocate for them with that. And I think I learned probably 60, if not 70% of what I know as a nurse in LPN school.
Yeah. One of the things what was kind of humbling for me when I first became a nurse, I worked with a nurse named Bobby, and I interviewed Bobby before on the podcast. And Bobby was, a 20-year LPN who worked in the ER for, 18 years or something, like been there, done that, seen it all, done it all. And I remember, I never knew she was an LPN. She was just always a nurse. And that was always it. I knew she didn't do triage, and I knew she didn't do the traumas, and I didn't know why. I never thought to ask. I figured it's just because she was old and she didn't want to anymore. She was like, no, I'm done with that. Because she certainly could handle herself in both those places. And I remember, as a new nurse, one of the first shifts I worked kind of on my own, and she was like, hey, can you co-sign my meds for me? And I was like, why would I co-sign your meds? And she's like, well, because I'm an LPN. I'm like, you are? And she's like, yeah, you didn't know that? And I was like, no, I had no idea. And she's like, yeah. She goes, that's why I don't do trauma or triage. She's like, I'm an LPN. And she goes, so that means you got to sign off my stuff. And I was like, Bobby, you've forgotten more about nursing than I know. And she's like, I understand that, but this is what we have to do. And I was like, roger that. And that's what we're going to do. And I remember telling her, Bobby, go back and get go back and get your RN. She's like, why would I do that? And she's like, I'm almost 60, Kevin. I'm not going back to school. And I was like, why not? And I still stand by that she should have. But she was like, no, I'm done. I'm done with this. Yeah. But she's forgotten more about nursing than I knew.
Yeah. That goes back to what I was saying, that we were saying about initials and degrees. And you put her next to someone with a PhD on bedside patient care, and I don't know. I really have learned from everywhere that I've worked, and I don't want to say level, but different licensure and certification level of people. I've worked with the best and worst doctors in 4 states, and the smartest and dumbest doctors in 4 states. And I've learned very quickly that a lot of people can, become a doctor and not be very smart. And a lot of people can become nurses and not be very smart. So I don't know. I just always like to advocate for everybody being a valuable member of our team. And
now, how do you instill that in the new, because you're in education now, how do you instill that into the new nurses that are coming into your department? Because your ER is probably like everyone else in town, everyone else in the country that you're taking on new grads. How do you emphasize that to your new grads who, maybe get out and they'll be like, well, I'm a BSN. And you're like, nobody cares.
Yeah. And I've not run into that yet. Honestly, which I was just having a conversation with another nurse friend of mine, is that it used to be in the ER. It was kind of unheard of, at least in my experience, for new grads to be in the ER. It was maybe one, if they were just razzle dazzle their way through the interview process, then that was, getting the brass ring, to get ER. And it's just slowly with our nursing shortage, we're just looking for, and I don't want to say warm bodies. We have people that are better than warm bodies, but we have 5 new grads this year, and I am immensely impressed with them. I'm immensely impressed with the new grads we had last year that, came into nursing during a pandemic,
right,
and had their orientation shortened. And you know what? Not only are you going to have your orientation shortened, but you're going to take a couple of ICU holds too. So welcome to being an ICU nurse on top of an ER nurse, and you are a brand new grad. And they just rose to the occasion in a way that I don't think I could have. And, our new grads now that went to school during the pandemic, and so a lot of their clinicals were shortened. And, I have advocated for them because we've had some comments, on nurses graduate nursing school not knowing anything. And to some extent, that's true because you learn so much after you graduate, but you learn a lot and you have a good base of knowledge. And, my counter to that is, who else graduates without really knowing anything? Our residents. And, we treat them with respect and have to raise them just like we do nurses. And, I help we are just now started a residency program at Stillwater. We've never had them until this year. Wow. And I was kind of helping them learn how to use our life pack, our defibrillators, and running through some scenarios with them. And they're all ACLS certified, but they got tripped up a little bit.
Yeah, you're like, go get a nurse.
Yeah. And that, what do you do in amiodarone and VTAC? And so they were a little bit tripped up on it. And so I, told our new grads that. And I said, they are about on the same level that you guys are when it comes to how to take care of patients in person and critical thinking and things like that. Obviously, they've been through medical school and have a ton more knowledge than we gain in nursing school. But I am the biggest cheerleader for new grads. And, they've done studies where they've taken 2 different sets of people and they took a test and they told set A that, you scored exceptionally high on this and you've got a lot of potential. And whether they did or didn't, it was a lie. But they found that the people that they told that to, that we see a lot of potential in you because you really scored high on this. It was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that they started to rise to that. And so that's what I try to do with our new grads is constantly positive feedback. Like, I'm utterly impressed with you guys. You guys are the best that I've ever seen. And it's not a lie. I don't want to be disingenuous by any means, but people will believe what you tell them enough. If you tell them they're incompetent and they're not smart and they don't have any brain cells and didn't graduate knowing anything, then they're going to believe that.
Yep. It's true. It's true. It's all about the care and time you put into them when they do get there. Because what I tell people all the time is nursing school doesn't prepare you to be an ER nurse. It just doesn't.
I told him that same thing. Yeah. And I told him, I said, you went to nursing school. You didn't go to ER nursing school. Right.
Yeah. You're like, I would not expect you to know this. Like, these are things I don't expect you to know. If you do, that's great. And if if you can say, oh, well, I happen to know what, their sodium should be. I'm like, that's awesome. Great. That's good to know. Now let's see what that, how you apply that in the emergency setting. And it really, it's just different. Like, when the rubber meets the road, it's just different. And that's okay. That's what it's supposed to be.
And something that is a little bit, I should say, humbling. We have practice partners for our RNs, and not all, I guess 4 out of our 5 new grads were practice partners. And so basically they get paid to do their clinicals. So they come to RER awesome. And they do all their clinicals, but they get paid. And they also have to have, I can't remember if it was how many hours, but they have to have so many hours as a tech. And so they're working as a tech. And I have heard several of them say how valuable that was and how helpful it was for them to work as a tech in the ER before they were a nurse. And we've started to, on just our new hires in general, whether they have experience or not as a RN, that their first 2 shifts are with a tech.
We did the same. We did the exact same thing with our residents. We were, when COVID first kind of hit, there was really no nurses to train them, and the nurses were just getting swamped immediately. So we're like, let's just bring them in and we'll have them work with techs. They can work with the techs. They can learn that tech role. We'll let them do that for a couple of weeks, and then we'll transition them into nursing eventually. And oh my gosh, like, game changer for their skill, their comfort level. One of the things that I really appreciated that Lisa Wolf told me a long time ago is Lisa Wolf said, hey, you may be dealing with people who've had very little clinical experience and very little talking to strangers that they don't know. And I think she said, one of the things she said was, this may be the first time they've ever seen a naked stranger. Like,
oh yeah.
And you're like, oh, I never really thought about that, but you're absolutely right. And and it shows, and you can see that in folks, and when they, if you can get them past that, they're a clean slate. You can actually teach them a lot. So, it's I'm always just super excited about residents. So it's
exciting. And I tell them, I was like, hold on to this feeling that you have, because any of us that have done this for a minute or two, you get so jaded, and I think it kind of ebbs and flows. You go through seasons in your career where you just, I call it ER nursing, like an alcoholic abusive spouse, is that, there's a day you're like, I don't know why I do this. I'm never doing this again. I don't know why I put up with this. I need to find something else to do. And then you have a few good days. And you're like, this is the best job ever.
Best ever.
Yes. Yeah, it is literally the abuse cycle. You're like, you have this honeymoon phase, and I love this.
I don't know how many times people have said exactly that. Like they talk about the ER like an abusive relationship, and you're like going, yeah. And like every ER nurse I know is like, oh yeah, totally. And because it is a lot of ways, it's like that. You want it to get better. You think it's going to get better, and then it doesn't get better.
Yeah. And then you'll have a couple of good days.
Yeah. And you're like,
you'll have like a low census day where it's kind of, you're like, wow, this is nice. Like we actually got to sit down and talk to each other a little bit and figure out what we were going to order for lunch. Yep. And then the next day you're like,
next day you're just hammered.
Right back at it. Yeah. Yep. But I tell our new grads, I was like, hold on to this feeling. And I even tell, we start talking about resiliency and all of that. And I said, go back to you, all the way back to you applied to nursing school, and some people didn't get in, and you got into nursing school, and some people didn't make it all the way through nursing school, and you did. You stuck with it, and you wanted to be a nurse, and then you passed boards, and then you were super excited. You got online and you looked up jobs, and you were super excited about working ER at XYZ. Yep. Yeah, and you got it. And I have to tell that to myself too sometimes. Like they didn't come and recruit me. Like I wanted this job. Yep. I need to remember that. I signed up for this. I was excited about having it. Yep. And I do. I love my job. I don't always love the people I take care of, and I don't love every task I'm doing every day. Of course. But overall, we have a pretty stinking cool job.
Yeah. And overall, it's not bad.
Everybody, when you at a party or at a social event and they're like, what do you do? And you say you're an ER nurse, and they're like, oh wow, like that's so cool. And like, yeah, it really is, isn't it? And even more so when I was flying, they're like, what do you do? I'm a flight nurse. And they're like, oh, that's so cool.
You're awesome. Yeah.
And it was, and I'm glad I had that first season of my life and I did it. And I'm also glad that I'm not getting woken up at 3 a.m. when it's 19 degrees outside either.
I talked to a gal today. So I woke up in the middle of the night. I couldn't sleep. So I got on the computer and somebody had posted, oh my gosh, I have insomnia. And I was like, hey, me too. Like, look, where's my And then we started talking and we were having a conversation, and she just became a flight nurse. And she's like, oh my God, I thought this was the pinnacle of my career. She's like, I hate it. And I was like, oh, that's really too bad. And she's like, I know. She was like, I'm beside myself. She goes, I just don't even know what to think. And I'm like, hey, but you know what? That's okay. At least you tried it. You tried it. You can say you did it. You did it. You accomplished that. She went out and got her CFRN. I was like, you're legit. You know your stuff. Like you made it, you survived orientation, and you're doing good. And you are now you can forever say you have been a flight nurse. I was like, but if it's not for you, that's okay. It's okay to know that. It's okay to know that and be like, okay, well, let's find something that is for you. And she's like, but she goes, this is always what I wanted to be. And I was like, I know, I felt the same way. Like that was my goal. When I was going to nursing school, my goal was always to be a flight nurse. And then by the time I became a nurse, I was like, yeah, no, I'm good. Like I'll keep my feet on the ground. But I still, even now to this day, like, I went and got a haircut today, and the lady's like, oh, what do you do? I was like, I'm a nurse. She goes, like, what kind of nurse are you? I said, I just instinctively said I'm an ER nurse. And, not, I'm a nursing administrator. I'm a nursing, house supervisor. They don't know what that means. But I just say I'm an ER nurse, because no matter where I work, I'll always be an ER nurse. So,
yeah. So. And I, we have tours as an educator. I get pulled into, the high school tours and stuff, and they're coming all through the hospital. And I, have my spiel about the ER and tell them, I said, in general, I said, I'm always going to recommend somebody go to nursing school if they don't know what they want to do. And I said, because it impresses me and amazes me how many doors it opens. I said, because you can go and get an associate degree, RN, ADN. And I said, you can work home health or deliver babies or fly on a helicopter, work in the ER, or give Botox injections. Or, it's like the world is your oyster. And if you graduate and like that nurse, somebody right out of the gate may go and work med surge. I'm like, I don't like nursing. You're like, you might not like nursing. You might not like that area.
Yeah.
And we all have our like, you know what, God bless. I do not want to work home health. God bless the people that work home health. And then, I have some friends that are home health and they're like, I don't know how you do ER. I would never want to do ER. I would never want to work in the operating room. Like, God bless. There's a flavor for every nurse.
There's a flavor for, you're absolutely right. There is a flavor for every nurse. And there's so many things I'm like, no, I would never. I was recently offered a job as a director of an ICU. And I was like, I am so not qualified for that. And they're like, leadership's leadership. You'll be fine. And I was like, no, like I can't relate to those people. Like, I'm like, I am not an ICU nurse. Like, I don't understand how their brains think. Like
they would
so
flip
different.
their lids the first time. You're like, just wing it.
Yeah, you're like, they're like, well, what's coming? I don't know. Just figure it out. And you're like, they'd be like, what? Huh? And
we'll figure it out.
And I'm like, it'd be fine. Yeah, we'll be okay. And they're like, but wait, we don't have a plan. And I'm like, all right.
We'll adapt and overcome. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I was like, it'll be okay. Like, it's just 12 hours. We can do anything for 12 hours. So, and they'd be like, no, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a flavor for every person. And God bless you if you find out you're like, when did you realize that like ER was what you were meant to do?
It must have been in clinical. Because I have a very clear, like, core memory of the first interview I ever had as an LPN. I was 19 years old. And it was at a doctor's office. Dr. Woodruff, God rest her soul, I learned so much from her. She's the perfect doctor to have your first nursing job with. Just the heart of a teacher. And I remember her asking me like why I wanted to be a nurse and would I ever want to do ER? And I was like, oh no, I would never do ER. Like I just want to work in a clinic where we can maybe help people before they get that sick maybe. And like, no way. That's a very core memory of me saying I would never work ER. And I think as I was in my ADN program, I think the clinicals that I did, and then you get to pick your preceptor, and I precepted in ER at night, which was so hard because I had two very young kids, and I would work med surge from 7 to 7, and I would get off at 7, and I would work 7 to probably midnight or 1 at doing my preceptorship in the ER, get just enough sleep to kind of do it again. And yeah, it was hard. Getting all that done. And I think that's when I kind of fell in love with it. And it was in Idabel, Oklahoma, a very southeast corner of Oklahoma. And they call it the Gun and Knife Club. So it was a fantastic place to be a nurse, an ER nurse. Cool. And there was a lot of alcohol and recreational drug use and weaponry. And quite often people don't call an ambulance in areas like that and just show up. Yeah. And pick up beds. And so a lot of my best trauma stories are from that ER, and it built me. And what's so great about working tiny ERs like that is the doctors that they get to work there. That's where I worked with the best and worst doctors in 4 states, because I worked with some phenomenal, probably the best doctors I'll get to work with in my career there. And some that probably should not have been practicing medicine as well. And so that's a perfect way to build you as a nurse, because you can say like, I've seen this done right, and this is not right. And it really gives you a voice to where like, basically you want to tell the doctor, like, you need to go over there and sit down and just let us do this.
Yep.
When like, this is not the way that this is done.
I remember when I was a technician, like I said, we used to do all the suturing and stuff, and we did a lot of suturing. Like, I was pretty good. Like, I would put my skills suturing up against a plastic surgeon. Like, I was that good, only because we did it 12 hours a day, 3 days a week. Right. So I remember this one resident was doing this weird suture knot, and she was trying to do something super fancy. I'm like, no, you don't need to do that. Just do a simple, straightforward, simple suture is all you need here, and it'll be just fine. She goes, no. She goes, the doctor told me to do this. The attending told me to do this. I'm like, he's going to want it the way I do it. Like, okay, let me handle him. And she's like, no. So she's doing this crazy, weird stitch that she learned somewhere. And I'm like, you don't even need that. And then the doctor, the attending comes in and goes, he looks at me and goes, what is that? Like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, I did this, and she explains this like crazy stitch she did. And she's like, he looks at me and goes, Kevin, did you teach her how to do just a simple interrupted suture?
I tried.
I go, yes, sir. She's got those down. And he goes, why don't you take that out? And he was like one of those, he was an older doctor that, like, not meaning to, always sounded super condescending, because he was like just so much smarter than everyone else. He's like, why don't you go ahead and take that one out, and Kevin will show you how to do just a simple interrupted, because that's all you really need there. And I was all, sure, sir, I can do that for you. And she's like, and he looks at the resume and goes, just do it the way the texts tell you to do it. And she just looked at me like, here she is, brand new resident. She was like, she thinks she was a first year resident. And here's, dumb Kevin with a high school diploma going, let me tell you how this gets done. And it was, it's just one of those where it's like, but if you know, you know. And one of the cool things about being in a place like that is, like, if you're the expert, you're the expert. And that's, and to be able to get a chance to share that is such a cool opportunity. And to have people who are willing to accept that and be with a team that says, I remember we had a patient come in, and she had a cut right across the top of her lip. And the patient goes, well, is there a plastic surgeon here who can do that? And the doctor goes, well, you don't need a plastic surgeon. We can take care of that. And she goes, well, are you going to do it? And he goes, oh, no, I'm not good enough. He goes, I'm going to have, one of these guys do it. And they're like, well, who are you? Are you guys doctors? And we're like, no, we're not doctors. And she was like, and he was like, but Katie is the one you want to do this. Like, Katie Katie teaches this. She's the one. And Katie's like, she's about 100 years old. She goes like this. She goes, yeah, I can fix that. That's no problem. And this poor woman's like, well, what does Katie do? I was like, Katie's a tech. And she's like, and I was like,
I know.
I'm like, it's who you want to do it. Like, there is nobody better in this entire building right now to fix your face than Katie. And of course it looked amazing, but yeah, it's always hard, but when you have that no ego of just, I love that about emergency nursing. I love that about emergency nursing. I love that about the ER. It's just such a cool thing. So, especially
if you can work, and there are all kinds of different ERs, and I'm sure there's different cultures and all kinds of, and what people are allowed to get away with. But if you can find that sweet spot where you have a good team environment, and, that's not my job is kind of a never phrase that you hear in your department, then man, you need to hold on to that.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you like about being an educator?
Oh man, my favorite thing about an educator is the way my mind works and the way I remember things. And sometimes it's word association, or sometimes it's a visual, or I don't know, when I teach something and someone just has that light bulb, like no one has ever explained it that way. And I never thought I would get that. And oh my God, I get it. And like, that is my crack. I love that so, so much. And, for our new grads, we have, before they take ACLS, they have to take a basic arrhythmia. And the nurse that was teaching that, she's taken on another role, so they didn't really have anybody to teach it. She had recorded all of them, and they were available on HealthStream, and they're fantastic courses, but like just sitting there and watching that amount of videos. And I was like, I really wanted to do something different for our new grads. So I made a basic dysrhythmia is what I called it. And it was literally an hour and a half. And it's like an ACLS light. And so I would show them different rhythms, and the very basics of how to treat them. And in the last 30 minutes of that class, we have our fancy mannequin that you can defibrillate and do all the stuff with in the room, and hooked up to our defibrillator. And, I would show them this rhythm pops up, and there's, 4 of them sitting there together. I was like, what is this rhythm? And they'll stumble over a little bit and like, oh, that's VTAC. Do you remember what you do for VTAC? And they're like, well, he's unstable. So unstable people get electricity. Okay. What kind of electricity does he get? He's going to get defibrillated. What are the joules? And, in an hour and a half, 5 of our new grads could almost run a mega code.
That's awesome.
And, and I don't want to, you want to balance between being humble, and I'm a good teacher. And I feel like if I can teach 5 people ACLS, almost, again, they're taking ACLS today and tomorrow, the full 2 days, but
they already have the foundation, right?
Yeah.
They're already like, oh, I know this. Yeah. I know.
Like if they were in a bind, and heaven forbid it was a mass casualty and it was just them in a room, I think they could pretty much stumble through it by themselves. Okay. Yeah. And I just love that on education. I love to, I lecture a lot on strangulation, and it's very, very near and dear to me for personal reasons. And I love at the end of it, people coming up to me like, oh my God, that was phenomenal. And, people texting me a year later, and you know what, my sister, this happened to her, or my whatever, this happened to her, or a provider, like somebody came into the clinic today, and just because of what you told me, and like that to me is my crack too, is just you giving someone information that they didn't have before, that they have helped people with.
And it making a difference. Like you're like, that's cool.
Yeah, that's super cool when I see that kind of stuff. So just that light bulb, that moment where I explained something in a way that they hadn't heard before that clicked. Yep. And that helps. You never know the way Bill Light is phenomenal and one of the best teachers you're ever going to have in anything. Yeah. And, he and I had a long conversation about stuff. And, I told him, I said, Bill, you have no idea the reach that you're going to have at the end of your life. The things that you have taught other nurses, that they have gone on to help patients, to save lives, to maybe educate even other nurses that you have no even direct contact with. I just think there's something in passing on that education to the next generation of nurse and the next generation of nurse that's stinking cool.
Isn't that just the coolest thing ever? Is like, I remember watching, I was an EMS instructor before I became a nurse. And I remember watching one of my students who was my EMT basic student, then he was my intermediate student, then he was my paramedic student. And I remember I was in the ER one day and he was there with a preceptor, a preceptee. And I remember him like saying like, is basically kind of like general patient assessment 101. He's like, okay, let's like bring it back to the basics. And he's like, these are the things. And he was saying the things that I taught him 10 years ago. And I'm sitting there going, and he's saying like exactly the way I taught him many years ago. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, it was just one of those, like, it was one of those memories that will forever be with me. That I'm like, always like, holy cow, this was like, I made a difference. And whether this person knows it or not, like I made a difference in this new paramedic who I've never even met. Like, and when you think of that kind of exponential reach you have as an educator,
oh yeah,
like how is there any cooler job than education? Like it's just the coolest. And
oh yeah, you
never know the lives you're going to touch, or the time that someone said, oh my gosh, like I heard this just at the right time I needed to. And and I forgot what it was. There's something that came up somewhere. I'm trying to think what it was. There's something that came up recently that I was like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that vaguely. And, thought about it for a minute. I think it was maybe when I was doing my NIH stroke training or whatever. And then like the next day or 2 days later, I was like, hey, this happened to come up. And I'm like, oh, wait, I know this. I know the answer to this. And it's just that one little, nugget of knowledge at the well-placed time that could make the difference between like the patient either getting great care and living or not getting great care and not. So
yeah,
it's just humbling.
that enduring legacy that you get to, and it is very humbling. And I've learned a lot from, like you said, the nurses before you that have forgotten more than I ever have learned. And, little CNAs that took time to teach me things when I was, brand new LPN. And
exactly.
I'm grateful for those people. And they probably don't know that here I am 25 years later, with a master's degree when I was, and that's what we all started off the same exact place. We all had our first day of nursing school not knowing anything, and our first day on the floor not knowing anything. So we all put our pants on one leg at a time. So
there was an EMT that I worked with named Audrey that like it taught me so much. And she was so good. And there's still things that I say that like are totally Audrey, right? Like I'm like that's 100% Audrey, or 100% Katie that's coming through at that time. And when you think about that, like I always think it's just kind of a cool thing to be able to kind of pay homage to the people who like, hey, this person taught me this a long time ago, and now I'm going to teach you. So that's a cool thing.
Well, and that's my goal is like, you look at people like, my people that I look up to, like Terry Campbell and Bill Light and Kristen, and Jeff Solheim, and just people that are these super dynamic educators that have given me all these aha moments. And like, that's who I want to be. I want to be that where, you make it fun and sometimes off color and sometimes, the right enough inappropriateness to make it stick. And, I just love that. I love teaching. It's what I've always wanted to do. I and now I get to teach and be a nurse. I love bedside still. I'm old. So, in the heart of COVID, I picked up a whole bunch of 4 to 8 hour shifts. And I was very honest. I was like, guys, I don't think I can pull a whole 12. Like, I'll try, but I'll do all the 8s you want me to do. And so I'll work nights. I'll work weekend nights if I can do 6 or 8 hours. So like my body won't take it, but I still love to go out there. If someone calls in sick, we're on group me and someone needs something covered, like, heck yeah, still love to get out there and take care of patients face to face.
Yep. It's still a cool thing. It's still a cool thing to be able to do. And I don't get to do it much in my role. My last 2 roles, I haven't had a chance to get to be much in patient care anymore. But when they were talking about it, when COVID was kind of at its peak, they were like, hey, you might be frontline. And I was kind of like going, all right, I'll be okay. I think I'd still be a safe practitioner. And I was kind of thinking, okay, that like, I wasn't excited about that just because I have, a wife who's immunocompromised, but I was kind of like, but if that's what I got to do, then by golly, that's what I'm going to do. So it's like, well, here we go. So
I know I remember working COVID ICU and having like vent patients, and it had been probably 10 years since when I flew. We would intubate and take care of ventilated patients. And I mean, I knew enough, like, I think I know what tidal volume is. And I kind of remember what SIMB is. And I just enough knowledge, but I mean, it was enough that the RTs would come in and give you about a 10-minute, like, okay, now I know what I remember now.
Like,
and
okay, got it.
Like we weren't doing Nimbex in the ER. So, I mean, it was a whole new learning on the drugs in ICU, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to have gotten to do that and to help our team. Just the way that nurses came together in all kinds of different departments and during COVID was really just inspiring.
Incredible.
And to see our CNO in scrubs cleaning beds in the ER and our CEO wearing scrubs to work because she was going to be moving boxes. And
doesn't that make you feel good about your team? Like when your team, like when you're like going, they'll do this shit too. Like they'll be like, I'm in, let's do this.
Yeah.
And no, they can't do everything, but I mean, the best nurse leaders I ever worked for were ones that were like, I'll jump in, I'll help. And I remember one of the CNOs I worked for saying she's like, okay, you don't want me taking care of patients. By golly, I can transport them. It's like,
yeah.
So,
yeah.
And the reality is she would have been fine taking care of the patients too. She was still a good nurse. So that's awesome. The last question I always ask, it's a hard one.
Oh God.
It's the question called 3 things. What are 3 things an ER nurse should remember? And what are 3 things they should just forget? And with your education, let's gear yours really more towards new grads. Like, what are 3 things a new grad should remember? What are 3 things they can just forget?
Oh man. Well, I mean, something that they need to remember is that they're a valuable member of the team, and that doesn't matter how many initials you have behind your name or your title or role in, your ER, is that you're just as smart as the next person in the room. They may have more experience and, again, more tools in their toolbox than you have, but you're just as smart. Second thing is that those people have more tools in their toolbox and more experience than you, so you need to shut up and listen and learn. have a little bit of reverence and respect for the people that have gone before you, and you can do that without being demeaned. Someone can educate you without demeaning you. And if they're a good educator, then they will do that. And if they're a good clinician, then they will do that for you. And the third thing as a new grad is, I think I've said that before, and I'll kind of revisit that, is just remember and bask in. And if you have to, journal it so you can come back to it, this feeling of the newness and awe and that you have when you first start out. Because if I could bottle that, if we could have that now, that feeling that you had, that just giddiness, just enjoy that for its magic, and enjoy that as long as you can. That, oh my God, I'm an ER nurse. And I don't know, just if I could have that again for a little while, I'd love to have that feeling back.
Yeah. That's a cool thing.
And man, what do you forget? I would just forget the really stupid questions and stupid stuff that you do, as long as it doesn't cause patient harm. We all have those where I remember being a new nurse for about a second and this is back when we gave Phenergan suppositories to kids before they had Zofran, and trying to get a goopy suppository into a baby that was doing, the alligator rolls and it going into her vagina. And I thought I lost my nursing license in that moment. And I just had the color left me, I'm sure. And the mom looked at me and she's like, did that just go where I think it went? And I was like, it did. And I went and told the doctor and I was ready to clock out. And he was like, it's a mucous membrane. He goes, like, it's fine. It's the same.
It'll be fine. It's like, not the traditional place, but it'll do its job.
So every nurse has got a story of like this and that wasn't even an intentional dumb thing that I did, but we all have like, oh no, we all have dumb things. So just to kind of let that go and laugh at the dumb questions that you've asked. And, I would like to say, forget the really hard tragedies, those awful codes and those awful, I think if it doesn't bother you and you don't carry some of that with you sometimes, then you're a sociopath. But you do have to leave it at work somewhat. You have to let those people go, those awful stories go a little bit. Because if you carry the entirety of those, then you're not going to last in the ER. You're not going to last as a nurse, is to kind of let those go as well. Mourn it in the moment, feel it in the moment, cry in the moment if you have to. Don't feel like you can't cry in front of family, and then kind of have to suck it up and go on to the next thing. And the third thing as an educator, I would tell you to forget is I feel like there's a finite space in my brain. And if I remember too many things, I'm going to forget how to tie my shoes one day. So I try not to spend a lot of time remembering things that I can look up very quickly. And I'm a fan of cheat cards and badge cards and all kinds of dosage cheat things and calculation cheat things. And for all of our equipment in the ER, I have pictures and QR codes and things that you don't need to remember, things that you can look up very quickly. Like remember the hard things, memorize the hard things. Don't memorize the really easy things that you can look up.
Yeah. I remember one time, and I remember what med it was now. I remember going, yeah, I've been a nurse for, over 10 years. I'm like going, I've never given this medication. Like, I don't know anything about it. And I was like, I was like, but I know where to find the information. So it's okay. We're going to be all right. So, and I remember being like super excited when I got to give Black Widow antivenom. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Because I've read this, it's a test on the CEN, or at least it was. But I'd never done it. Like, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I get a chance to do this. I'm like, all right, let's do it. So.
Nice.
That's cool. Great advice. I can't thank you enough for spending so much time with me. Holy cow, I didn't mean to take up this much of your time. So.
I can't thank you enough for the opportunity. I feel like I'm part of just an elite, cool club now.
It's a cool club. We have a secret handshake. We'll teach you that in Colorado.
Yes.
I'm kidding. But.
Thanks for listening to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Facebook.